Back. It is February and a part of a really interesting time of year. Lunar New Year started, and I can't even believe it. We are a month and a half into this year. Just another 10 months, we'll be talking about Christmas and wrapping up projects, and it feels like this is just where we started. Well, welcome in. My name is Pete Hollenhorst. I work as the National Sales Manager for Business Development here at Intellinet Network Solutions, where we're connecting great people with even better products. I want to invite you in. You're more than welcome to join in, ask questions, participate. There's never a bad time to get involved. And it's because we understand you. We understand where you're coming from. And we're trying to do some different topics as we move throughout this upcoming year because we understand the installer that you are, or at least we're trying to. We're providing products for daily use. Um, One of the big things that Don and I have tried to do when we set out doing this is using products that are essential to the everyday installer out in the field, or when you're mapping out a solution for one of your customers. We wanted to do that so that we focused in on key SKUs. Y'all will let me know a little bit more, hopefully in the comments or questions as we go on today with some of this, if we're in that box or if we're helping. But I also want to show you where some of the opportunity might lie as well. Um, Really, at the end of the day, we're talking about the backbone and the products that you'll use to support that backbone. And we think that we're in a really unique position to be able to do that. You might be asking, somewhere at the beginning or the middle of the call, why do we partner with Intellinet? What is it that Intellinet's doing differently than any other manufacturer that's out there? And the biggest thing that we're doing today is that comprehensive product coverage. About 90% of your installer's needs come through in active and passive networking needs. So by simplifying with one dedicated brand, we can simplify procurement. And depending on where you buy, we've got some really great streamlined purchasing options that are there, designed to minimize that friction that you typically have with a lot of the networking providers that are out there today. At the end of the day, though, you're backed with really good quality warranted products, really hand-picked products, and more importantly, some of the best technical support on calls like this and with our consumer support number that are out there. You probably know us and came to us today because of POE. We really are. At the end of the day, we are very much the POE people, but some interesting diversions that you might take a look at, or at least open up, your playbook to include fiber optic patch cables and adapters. I'm amazed at really where we've gone in terms of media converters, adapters, but just the speeds. When we talk about speeds, you know, we're constantly pushing that envelope. We've seen that transition from Cat 5e to Cat 6, and I'm here on the call telling you that if you're not already including Cat 6.8, making this a part of your everyday journey, this is really where you want to be. And then, when we get in to do the dedicated work on our racks and systems, Cat 8 it really has a dedicated place, especially today with the amount of data that we're moving. Now, if we're talking about patch cables, we should probably also talk about racks and cabinets, patch panels, things like that. These are all products that Intellinet carries and makes available through a variety of different distributors as well as directly on our website. At the end of your job or throughout your job, if you want to test any of this product, we've got that capability in a really meaningful way. So I wanted to just kind of introduce and talk about what it is that we're here doing. February is always an interesting time. We want to position about, and think about where our company, where our install efforts are moving towards and where it is that they're going. This is a big introduction for us. We want you to understand more importantly and more directly what industrial grade networking looks like. I'm going to help you navigate a little bit with TAA compliance, and then together, hopefully, we can select some really great products as well as position a little bit more where you can get into some profitable areas. The single biggest thing that I want to do, though, is just talk to you about supply chain security and why it is so important to work with a manufacturer that is consistently in stock, using quality vendors, using a process-built system to ensure not only continuity but safety when we talk about overall networking areas. So today, the install arena looks so much different than when many of us got into the industry 30 years ago. Yeah, there were outdoor cameras, but gosh, they were grainy. They didn't look that great. And PoE wasn't even a thought. We were using BNC cables for a lot of this. Today, I would really strongly encourage you, if you're not doing PoE cameras, or more specifically outdoor cameras, um, more specifically even into a pan tilt zoom capability, this is a huge area, and it's an area with a lot of growth in 2026. And then as we get into outdoor cameras, one of the biggest things that's propelling that is higher PoE requirements. And that's because we're dealing a lot more with 4K. And I'm just absolutely amazed at what's going on in terms of AI enabled devices. Whether it comes to cameras or whether it comes to network, or just overall security. There's a case being made repeatedly, if you're watching some of these RFQs coming out, for investing in some newer areas. And what's old is new again, but parking structures have really become a big way as we get more deeply into MDU, as we get more deeply into work, live, shop environments. We're increasingly being forced to take a look at networking in a completely different limelight. In addition to that, just with the expansion of where the economy has gone, I'm here in Texas, and I'm telling you, I see two different sides of Texas, and sometimes that's in the same hour. But extreme temperatures, extreme outdoor conditions are really a big, big thing for all of us. So we're going to talk a little bit about compliance documentation and why that's such a big deal. And then we're going to get even more deeply into right now into industrial grade networking, what that means. Now, you heard me talk about some of these just in the preface. When we talk about perimeter security cameras, when we talk about parking structured networks, when we talk about detached building connectivity, and really, at the end of the day, when we're talking about municipal and government projects, we're talking about a completely different arena than most of us are used to installing it. Now, good for you, Byron and Tim. If this is the demographic and the arena that you guys are installing in, by all means, I'm probably not teaching you anything dedicated new, but one of the big things that remains consistent when we talk about these types of installations is we're talking about areas right now that go far beyond the traditional switches. And I get it. You've got a manufacturer that you love. It might start with a U, it might start with an A, it might start with something else, but it's time to go beyond the commercial solutions and start really aggressively looking at industrial solutions. Now, I don't come from a metric system, so I'm not going to tell you that I understand completely what negative 40 degrees Celsius looks like, but I can very much tell you I know what 75 degrees Celsius looks like. Coming from Yuma, Arizona previously, I understand why industrial needs are there. And from a government standpoint, just with all the different installations there on a border town, it's a huge area. If you're doing anything in manufacturing as well, whether it is a manufacturing plant or a bottling plant, things like that, or if you're dealing with something in trucking or logistics, shock and vibration is a huge thing when we talk about setting up networks and doing something that's going to be able to withstand some of the harshest environments. The biggest thing, though, that I'm such a huge fan of when it comes to industrial over traditional commercial is that we're talking about DIN rail mounting. It's amazing what you can do in a pro cabinet there with something that just snaps on. We're not breaking out screwdrivers, we're sliding things on. The biggest benefit, though, and one of the reasons why I've started to do this in larger scale houses, when we get up into just the obscene, when we get into 15,000 square feet, when we get into 18,000 square feet, going to industrial right now, gives you redundant inputs, but more importantly, it keeps a really stable power connection. No matter what we're doing, though, if you're in a harsh environment or if you're dealing with shock and vibration, having something with a fanless design keeps the integrity of the boards that you're working with, and more importantly, it just minimizes the risk of introducing foreign objects in. When we talk about the difference between commercial grade and industrial grade, what we're really talking about is extremes. Negative 40 degrees Celsius is absolutely insane there, but 75 degrees Celsius is also equally there. You know, when we talk about warranty coverage, one of the best parts of industrial coverage and our parts is that it carries a minimum of a 3-year warranty. So you're getting better protection at roughly about the same price point, but more noticeably, you know, as we're dealing with, you know, higher and higher and higher wattage going through on these PoE or more power coming across, it's consistent. We anticipate these huge loads coming through, so you're getting predictable performance. And then from a surge protection, you know, when we're dealing with extreme conditions, surge is always a concern. You're getting better equipment protection than over traditional areas. So one of the things that we can do, though, is talk about that difference between where commercial ends and industrial starts. Now, I think you'll appreciate when we talk about industrial, I think ad nauseum, we've talked again and again and again about outdoor security. And you probably get it. Yeah, this is why an industrial makes a lot of great ideas, but maybe thinking about industrial in some different arenas as well. Maybe you're a little bit closer to this than you know. If you're working with large estates, why wouldn't it be for a gate or industrial access? What about a mechanical room in an MDU and things like that? Large estates are something that, you know, we all aspire to get into if we're on the AV or CDS side there. But more importantly, when we're talking about pool houses or we're talking about satellite garages and things like that, this is a big, big deal. And then, you know, as we're watching the rise of Uber Eats and DoorDash and everything else, commercial kitchens, or if we're dealing just overall with production capabilities, commercial kitchens are always an area that you can get into, as well as manufacturing facilities. We're seeing a lot more or a resurgence of manufacturing back in the United States. These are all huge areas. So one of the products that I'd love for you to embrace is, and grab a pen, write this down. It's a fantastic model. This is 508-261. This is an 8-port industrial PoE switch. I actually think that this is the dedicated workhouse of all the products that we're doing right now, where you're getting 8 gigabit PoE plus ports, and that gives you an access per port of 30 watts, which is just absolutely perfect when we're talking about cameras and dedicated access points. This is a product that's going to be built for just the everyday use, come into a smaller building, somewhere sub 12,000 square feet, and it's going to do everything that you needed to do if you're just doing a takeover job. And that DIN rail mountable makes it for a really easy cabinet setup across the board. So 120 watts, really good temperature range right now, but this is going to be a great takeover place that you can get into in any one of those environments. Now, look, if you need something a little bit more robust, and I think all of us are always looking for that added advantage, one of the big ones that I'd like you to take a look at is 508-278. Now, this is a little bit better because we're talking about layer 2 management. We're talking about a web managed switch that's able to come through. Now, one of the big things that I like about this product right now is it's an all metal housing, but you're getting some really good functionality, port mirroring, so that you can troubleshoot and more importantly, monitor everything else that's going on. SFP uplinks so that if you've got fiber or want to leave room for fiber capability, and then dedicated VLAN segmentation, all really, really strong areas for you to get involved in as well. Taking a look even deeper though, when we get into PoE++, this is for some of the most power hungry devices that are out there. This is 508-995. Again, we're staying with that all metal housing. I really like that that's out there. But check this out, 60 watts per port. That's the advantage of PoE++, is that 4 individual ports right now at 60 watts per port. And if you take a look, we pulled this off the web. True design. It's a small footprint. So for an outdoor enclosure, for a security cabinet, small SMB, it does a really good job. And again, keeping that eye towards the future, two SFP uplinks gives you some really great capability. Panda zoom cameras with heaters, not a problem. You want to make sure that you've got room for an AI enabled camera, 100%. Or how about an LED panel or automatic shades or, some of the newest access points that are out there or overall building displays. It's a really, really great switch. Now, we don't just do switches. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, just kind of that potpourri, but media converters. This is something that Intellinet is in and does on a regular basis. And PoE injectors are a fantastic addition to this. If you need more ports but don't have the budget, or you're doing a takeover or just an add-on, a PoE injector is always a great place to go. We've got a 10 gig injector just on the verge of coming out. And then DIN power supplies as well as cable assemblies. If you were looking for terminated patch panels, we can do that. The big advantage here when we talk about industrial networking right now, working with Intellinet, is that you're getting a single vendor ecosystem. You're getting somebody that understands how to distribute power, and then more importantly, provide additional options to connect that power to something, whether it's media converters, or before that with an injector and things like that. All of this is really great information, right? We want to do a great job. We want to provide some really good options for you, but what's in it for you? Why is industrial an area that you want to come through? Well, if you take a look at that top line, 60% reduction in service callbacks, wouldn't you like to get into an industry where, you install for the first time and it all goes right? What about higher margins? I mean, there's such a big difference between industrial and residential. So premium product positioning and pricing all do a really good job. These installs are much faster because we're not dealing with the commercial, or we're not dealing with the traditional residential overhead and infrastructures that are out there. The ability to get up into the rafters, the ability to work outside, and then the biggest thing here is that you're competitive right out of the gate. There's so few companies right now that are doing anything in industrial. You could get that competitive edge, even if it's only 5%, 10% of your business. The ability to say, "Hey, this is something that I do. We'd love to give you that capability again and again." So, all right, let's take a deeper look right now into TAA compliance and what that means. Um, Industrial is just one side of what Intellinet does. TAA is really quickly becoming a much bigger part of what we do here in the US. And it's not just designed for industrial, it's not just designed for residential. Um, it's a part of an everyday thing. If you are looking for one of the most secure networks in the United States, having a network that meets the criteria for TAA compliance is probably one of the best places to start. Now, one of the big reasons for that is this is now a federal law requirement. If you're doing anything in terms of networking in a federal government office, or if any federal funding is being supported, um, in networking, this is now a huge requirement. And it gives kind of a get out of jail card, or more importantly, maybe a certainty where the country of origin rules very, very straightforward. It's got to be manufactured or substantially transformed in a TAA designated country. These are friends of the United States, meaning it's not a Chinese product. It's not coming from a bad actor state and things like that. The minute federal funding is used, you've got to be able to do that. So let me translate that for you. If we're getting into college funding, if we're getting into a statewide agency, but it's being funded federally, chances are it's going to meet this type of requirement. And all of that flows down. Your general contractor that's bringing you in may know that it's a TAA project, but forgot to let you know. But these requirements do flow down to you as a subcontractor. So if you're working on city, county, state, or federal projects, it's a good idea to make sure that we're including this TAA. It's probably the only time I use red font in one of my trainings, But non-compliance has consequences. At a minimum, it's payment denial, but it could prevent you from potentially being able to bid on future job sites. So TA becomes really, really important when we're dealing with federal facilities or federally funded projects, but it spills over into some other areas that maybe you're not thinking about. Infrastructure projects. You want to get involved in a bridge or a dam or a dedicated road or tollway that's out there. If it's using federal transportation funding, it's a big deal. If the college or educational institution that you're working with is getting any kind of grant, probably going to need to have TAA funding. But public safety networks, whether it's law enforcement or just any emergency services, all a really, really big deal. And then one of the things that we're starting to see is healthcare facilities, Medicare, Medicaid, federal healthcare programs, VA, anything like that. TAA compliance is going to be a big deal. So one of the first places that we can take a look at where to get in and be more TAA compliant is on this really great rack mountable PDU. Um, the feature image up top, it's a clean single one view, that comes in. The back side of this is, we've got a handful of just dedicated power parts that are there, but it's amazing what you can do with this beyond just the overall capabilities of this. You're getting something that's managed and metered so that real-time power consumption and tracking. I literally can turn devices off remotely so that I'm not leaving any network device online. But the built-in surge protection is huge. And what I love about this is that not only is it TAA compliant, it's a one-use solution. One of the things, though, that when we talk about TA compliance is that there are unmanaged options. We just looked at a managed option. We'll get deeper into it with some additional solutions, but there are unmanaged options, just simple plug and play switches for simple installations, or you can get into managed units with power display and things like that. I love, though, that you've got the convenience of choice, multiple form factors, something that works on a desktop, something that works in a rack, or something that works industrial there. You've also got a lot of different PoE capabilities. The documentation package is everything, though. Having those certificates, having the specification reports are huge when we get into overall. There's three phases that we'll talk about in a second. In that pre-bid phase, making sure that you've got the documentation for the packages that you're building are really, really big. And then we'll get into bid submission and project award. But let's talk for a second about the hidden risk and why TAA is such a big, big deal. When we talk about TAA, what we're really trying to get around is, I get it. A lot of contractors right now say, hey, I really like the switch and it meets all the requirements, but if I know those, I'm wondering if I could save a few bucks or increase my profitability by going with a lower cost solution. And all of a sudden you're working with a name brand you've never heard before, but the specs are in line. And it is amazing the fingers that organized crime or even nation states can get their fingers and hands in. And all of a sudden, you're using a fake chip that's maybe creating a cybersecurity risk. Or more importantly, you're working with a fake chip and substandard parts. And at some point, that compromises the overall reliability. You're having to go back. The lack of traceability is also the other part. When we're dealing with TAA products, you know who the manufacturer is, you know the plant, you have a rough idea of the time when that unit came out. The lack of traceability makes it really difficult right now to pursue a warranty or to understand why did we get hacked and where did we get hacked from. And then geopolitical disruptions. One of the biggest concerns I think that all of us have been through over the last 4 years right now is supply chain instability. So when we're dealing with TAA products, we're dealing with nations and countries that provide a pretty decent overall supply chain area. And then the last part, it's just my personal thing coming from a handful of different manufacturers where we would release something and then copycat products that are there. Typically, TAA means no intellectual property theft. We're not dealing with copycats. We're not dealing with somebody that is building for dedicated price points. You're getting something that is a quality build, respecting the IP, and the trademarks that are out there, and a good partner overall. So one of the big things about bidding in TAA and where that difference maker can be starts literally at that pre-bid phase. This is why we were talking about some of these earlier in the previous slide. But that origin certificate and that compliance letter puts you in a really unique place because you're showing up early, saying, look, this is a TAA project. We're recognizing it. We've got all the documentation and the specifications 100% taken care of. And when you submit that bid, having those certificates and the declarations means a great deal. You're literally meeting the overall technical technical specs. And then, as the bid supported or as the bid is progressing, we can work with you. Once it's awarded, we can provide all the documentation that you're needing, and then more importantly, the on-hand knowledge or in-house knowledge of what to do when you're out in the field. Some big tips though when we talk about TAA or even when we talk about industrial needs, one of the big things that I'm a huge fan of these days is VLAN segmentation. The ability to isolate camera and IoT traffic from corporate networks or just the overall network is huge. It just as a general practice, we want to be setting VLANs so we can separate front of house from back of house in a big way. Providing dedicated and secure firmware. This is one of the big reasons why post installation, I want to make sure that you've got really, really good warranties and programs with your customers so that you can come back, make sure that the network is healthy, and make sure that the current firmware is deployed. Documentation is everything. If you don't have a dedicated cloud and a dedicated drive that's documenting everything that it is that you've done with your customers and what each job site looked like, here's your subtle encouragement. It's time. And the network access control, the ability to implement port security and MAC filtering at a minimum is every bit. Work with vendors that offer transparency. I'm here. You can have my phone number anytime that you need it. Reach out directly. I'll give you my dedicated cell so that if you're on site on a Saturday or a Sunday, we want to make sure that you're successful. And then really good security monitoring. Make sure that you're going back, looking for the holes in your network, looking at unusual traffic patterns. Why is the server lighting up at 1:30 in the morning? What type of anomalies am I seeing? I'll take you through three dedicated real world applications there and what that looks like and why that's such a big deal out there. So let me talk to you about, these are all things that I've worked on just recently, but you know, somebody that needed a 64 camera perimeter system. This is an integrator that we work with down in Houston. Really, really good guy, but commercial buildings, total of 6 dedicated commercial buildings that are going on. And what he was looking for was he wanted something that was TAA, and more importantly, he wanted something that offered some industrial capability. So we deployed 3 of the 508 278s, and this was a web managed switch that was out there, and this provided everything that he was looking for. And the big thing that I appreciated was, I'm sorry, I geek out. I love the technology, but I also really love really good clean installs. Because of the DIN rail mounting, all of a sudden, we've got a really stable network that looks good and it's securely locked down. For the last 18 months, John hasn't had any problems. He knows that because he's able to monitor remotely and met all of the security requirements that were out there and that he was looking for. The other one, and I mentioned this earlier, I'm starting to really kind of rethink some of the luxury estate jobs that we do, something in that 12 to 15,000 square feet range. And I get it, there's so many different solutions that are out there, and we all want to make sure that it's working out. But one of the big things that I'm doing from an industrial area and moving more completely away from commercial and into industrial is situations just like this. Now, this wasn't a private theater building, this was a garage, but they did have a separate garage and a separate pool house there in a Texas deployment. So all of a sudden, we're into 110, 112 degree heat and even hotter when you get up into the attic. One of the best switches that we could deploy here was the 508-995 there, and we did this in each detached structure, but all of a sudden now I've got something that's working at a really good level, able to maintain heat, and because they were fanless, I didn't have any dust issues, I didn't have any noise factors, and everything just stayed up and running. Really, really nice area. I'm going to continue to get up on the soapbox right now. When we talk about parking structures, this might be the big encouragement for everybody. Take a look and bid frequently and often. This is a great way to get not only into industrial, but TAA as well. So one of the things that you can do here is with TAA, you can get into some county and federal areas there. Parking structures are always a huge area that's out there. But taking a look at just the overall numbers, and sorry, I got a dog right now that wants to help, but taking a look at the overall numbers right now, give me just a second. Taking a look at the overall numbers, we've got some great capabilities of reducing downtime, reducing overall product failure, and at the end of the day, just doing a really good job with overall diagnostic. The average time, if you decide to get into industrial and TAA, and this is just back of napkin math, but 18 months would give you an average payback on investing in premium. More importantly, the ability to troubleshoot because of VLAN layer 2 switches, the ability to reduce calls because of weather related areas over commercial products. I just don't know that you could ever find a downside or a negative reason to do that. If I was positioning a company today, if I was trying to do something a little bit different, I would lead with capability. If I was looking for the cutting edge of why your firm, Byron or Tim, or anybody that's watching this on a replay, lead with the capability. I'm a specialist. I can do industrial. I can do commercial. I can do residential. Talk to your customers about safer networks. It matters more than the solution. Some of the most private things that we do are on our networks that are there. And this is where my chili recipe is. But offering compliant solutions proactively and ahead of time, not just in government and municipal environments, but even to your customers. If you're dealing with an affluent customer, if you're dealing with somebody that is notable in the industry or just overall in the world, having a TAA compliant network is huge. And then prove that profitability. Once we get into industrial, once we get into TAA, what you're getting is a really, really robust, solid network, but it's also going to give you the peace of mind that you're not having to come back. So offer that warranty or the performance plan to your customer. But more importantly, talk to them about just the lack of downtime. Show them past examples of customers that you're there. How long have those networks been online? Things that you can do right now, just do a quick pipeline audit. What is it that you're doing? Where are those capabilities right now in your overall area? Specification templates. Start to take a look at other networking brands that you've got. Do they offer industrial? Do they offer TAA? And if they don't, this is a great opportunity. Talk to your business partner, talk to your install crews about overall pricing strategies. What could we do if we got into industrial? What could we do if we got into TAA? And what do we do with those profits? And then look, if we get to that point, you want to talk about team training, I'm happy to come in, coach you guys up, and not just on my products, but the overall industry. And let's go out together. Let's build and develop the market a little bit more. So three critical points across the board. Industrial switches solve real problems that commercial grade can't. TAA compliance isn't just government, federal government, but it's also municipal, and it could be any variety that's out there. Takeaway number three, I should have a solution for just about anything that's out there, whether it's industrial or commercial or residential. We've got that. And then at the end of the day, premium products mean premium margins that are there. Education is always a good thing to go. Supply chain security is also a really, really great way. I want to be mindful of time. I told you guys that we'd get you out in at a regular time. At the end of the day, though, product selection is everything. TAA compliance and network design all make better networks overall, which allows you to optimize your overall margin. Don't forget the specs. Please don't forget the specs. All right. Normally Don would handle this, but we're just going to do just a quick background on TAA. And what TAA means is that you have a greater control of knowing that the switch has been created and a partner or an ally that the U.S. Likes to work with. If you take a look overall, just as a quick aside of what's going on with Cisco devices for large scale cyber attacks, it is absolutely incredible just how many different things can get hacked in a variety of different deals. Sometimes even just standard manufacturers that you know that for a moment had a lapse and used some other security chip, and all of a sudden there's traces of just bad malware on their chips, which leads to a variety of different devices getting infected. Um, One of the big things, maybe you saw the news on it, this was a really bad campaign called Zero Day. And this was a software flaw, or is a software flaw, that a vendor or a developer didn't know. It's literally right there on a chipset, and they have 0 days to create the security patch because they didn't know that the hole exists. And it's incredible because there are guys that are reading technical specifications, they know factories that are coming through, or they know loopholes that are coming through. And the software, because of AI, is getting that easy to access that all of a sudden you have somebody that starts to do a state actor attack or a cyber crime so that malware is able to get up and out. And it is amazing to me. You see people downloading apps with no idea what it is that they're doing, or grabbing stuff from really well-known e-commerce sites where they never heard of that manufacturer or anything else, and all of a sudden start to introduce that into their network and are surprised when they hear about cyber crimes being done or DDoS exercises, and they're literally the ones that are providing the hosts and the support to come out and be able to do that. Now, more importantly, if you take a look at just that Cisco iOS 0 day, chain attackers didn't just stop creating it at an account, they took root control over an entire Linux opportunity. Now, what this does is it literally comes in through a back door. In this case, it was a UI flaw that allowed you to get even deeper into it and elevate privileges all the way to the root level. Once that's done, once I'm at the root level, I can write malicious code. And this one, it was the Lua-based backdoor. Write it directly to the file system, and it allows you to it allows attackers to really get deep into the system level, and more importantly, to not raise any eyebrows. Um, if we take a deeper look at 0 day here from Cisco, it literally resided in the memory, and if the device was rebooted, but if the device, and it would be wiped if the device was rebooted, but all of the different accounts remain persistent even after the reboot. This is how nasty a 0 day was. Being aware of your overall software is a really important area. TAA is everything, and it starts at a chip level. It starts at a manufacturer's level, and it's so important. Don wasn't here for this section, but Don's done a really great job in terms of breaking down really good products, talking about risk on um, a regular basis, and he's got a dedicated YouTube channel on our Intellinet YouTube channel that's out there. But look, if you'd like to know more, call our tech support hotline 1-888-844-2636, 1-888-844-2636, or visit us out on YouTube. It's out there. We're going to move this over towards the field crew and talk a little bit about some of the reasons to join the field crew and what it is that you need to do to be able to take advantage of that. So let's talk about growing together. You know, one of the big reasons why you're here and why we're here is that we're both looking for success. We want to do more. with our current environments that are there, and all of us collectively are looking for growth. One of the big benefits of joining the field crew today is that you're getting webinars like this, but bi-monthly dealer engagements, basically emails and promotions that are sent out, and the ability to talk directly to us. So if we're not building something that you want to see, we'd love to hear about it. We'll always take a deep look at, hey, maybe this is something other people can use. One of the big reasons, though, is that we are very focused on a field crew there. We don't just support distributors. We don't just support houses where you're able to buy. We're really here for the overall installer. We want to focus on those key SKUs that it is that you're looking at. So the emphasis on essential products is really important. We're here to make sure that we're in stock and we're supporting and enhancing the overall efficiency. So it's a long-winded wind up to say, here's how we're going to do things like that. So if you'll take out your phone, this is a QR code to join the Performance Pro program. Just to the right of that rocket ship, shoot your phone over that. That's going to bring up that QR code. And if you have 5 minutes, just quickly jot down some information. We'd love to support you and get deeper in with you. If you need more, though, professional recognition, installation tips, you can always contact Dawn at 1-888-844-2636, and we'd love to do a great job for you in a variety of different areas that are out there. Other ways that you can engage with us right now, again, keep your phone out. We're going to use these QR codes a little bit further. We have a Facebook page, and if you're not on Facebook and you're using kind of the adult or business version of Facebook, come join us on LinkedIn. It's probably how you heard about us right now, or via email. Our website does a really, really good job as well. The website's got really detailed specs, printable spec sheets that you can walk in or include in your bids. And then that engagement, if you'll actually shoot that QR code, it's going to give you access to upload any of the installations that you're doing with pictures. We'd love to talk about what you're doing with us out in the field. We promise we're going to give you notoriety. We'll put it out on our web pages, things like that. But I'd love to see a great rack system or an access point or a camera, anything like that. And again, at any point, if you need to get a hold of us on the tech support side, you can contact us at 1-888-844-2636. Again, that's 1-888-844-2636. Or some other ways that you can engage with us right now would be dedicated sales support, 1-813-855-0550. We've given Don's number ad nauseum, or you can always email us at sales@intercom.com. Always amazed when we get an email coming through. So at the end of the day, why join with Intellinet? From an industry focus, we do a really strong job of trying to focus on the install needs of security, AV, CEDIA dealers that are out there. Programs like this that we're doing today with really good dedicated webinars and technical support that's out there, and then reliable products. We're known for our switches. I'd love for you to see what our network equipment does, data center solutions, and everything in between those areas that are out there. We're offering growth, we're offering partnership, and a deeper dive. So in March, we're going to go into a much deeper dive with PoE++ and talking about what you can do with some of the higher power budget needs that are out there. I'll be back. We'll have some interesting things to talk about that's out there. Please be good to one another. It's such a great opportunity that we get to have. We get to make a real impact in the field for everybody, but please be good to one another. Be good to yourself. Be careful in your installs. And I can't wait to see you come back in March. Have a great day. Thanks again.